activity unless, of course, you can't find her. And, really more often than not, you're not having to find your queen. So it's not a skill set that we get to practice very often. So I tell beekeepers that when you're in your hive, just practice it as you can. Because there's really not a practical reason that you have to find her every single time. Because, of course, if we're looking to determine the status of our queen, meaning is she laying eggs, we're looking for eggs and not for the queen, right? So when we're looking for our queens, of course, if she's marked with a dot, you can start to look for the dot first. Though know that the dots, the pen markings don't always last forever on all of the queens. Some of the colors tend to rub off faster than the others. I find that the white marker tends to rub off the fastest. But so you can, of course, use that as a beacon. But outside of that, you're going to have to use other, tools in your toolbox. And so, of course, look in the brood nest. That's where she should be. She could end up most anywhere, particularly if you're not using a queen excluder. I find lots of queens on inner covers all the time. But look in the brood nest first. And my best tips for finding her outside of looking for the marking is looking for a hairless thorax. So worker bees tend to have hair covering their bodies, and our queens have a very smooth thorax. It looks a lot darker because it's not covered in hair. So look for that dark black thorax. Secondly, I think she moves a little bit differently. This is something that you just have to demonstrate. It's harder to talk about, but I once read a passage that the worker bees look like they're moving in a mosh pit, whereas the queens look like they're waltzing across the comb. And I couldn't agree more. Know that when you pull out your frame and she's on there, she's going to run from you. She plays this amazing game of hide and seek. So she's going to run back and forth from one side of the frame to another. So if you're really struggling, here's some tips I can share with you to try to find her. So I always have an empty box next to me if I have to find my queen. So that way, as I'm pulling out a frame, I can scan for her. And once I clear a frame, meaning she's not on that frame, I can put that frame in the box next to me. If you put it back in the hive, she can, of course, run up on that frame later. So I work through the entire box that way. And then once I get to the end of the box, I can pick up the box that I was looking in, look around the edges, and if she's not there, then I can move on to the next box. One other quick tip is that queens tend to run towards the darkness, right? As I mentioned, when you pull out a frame, she's going to run to the backside of the frame, away from you and away from the light. So if you open up your hive and you take out a couple of the frames, and then you put the remaining frames in pairs of two, and wait a minute or two, there's a pretty good chance she was going to run up in between two of those frames where it's darker. And then you can pull out the two frames together. You might need a second set of hands for this, and then open them up like a book. And pretty good chances that she's going to be in between two of the frames that are facing one another, because again, she's going to seek out the light.